It's a chilly December 20th, 1968, roughly 10:30 p.m. in the foggy streets of Vallejo, California. The night air is thick with the scent of damp wood and saltwater as a couple, Michael Mageau and his girlfriend Darlene Ferrin, are gunned down in a brutal crime that will shock the nation. The hail of bullets shatters the quiet of the evening, the sound echoing through the sleepy neighborhood like a chilling scream. The victim's screams are drowned out by the incessant ringing of gunfire as at least 5 shots are fired from the killer's mysterious Smith & Wesson .38 revolver. Blood splatters paint the sidewalk as the couple's life hangs in the balance. As the night sky is illuminated only by the faint glow of distant streetlights, the scene unfolds like a macabre dance. The victims, Michael Mageau and Darlene Ferrin, lie motionless on the sidewalk, their bodies twisted in a grotesque pose. Crumpled up on the ground is a torn piece of clothing, and nearby a broken beer bottle lies shattered on the pavement. Blood flows through the cracks of the sidewalk as if the very earth itself has been wounded. The smell of gunpowder hangs heavy in the air, mingling with the cries of distant sirens. Michael Mageau, 19 years old at the time, was one of the few survivors of this heinous crime. He would recount the nightmarish events in vivid detail, describing a faceless figure in a hooded jacket shooting his girlfriend multiple times before turning the gun on him. Mageau would later recall seeing the killer's face, but it would be a fleeting glimpse, lost to the horror and chaos of the moment. The killer's face seemed to melt into the darkness as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind only a haunting memory of cold, calculating eyes. A figure that would forever be shrouded in mystery. Eyewitnesses would later claim to have heard the sound of a vehicle fleeing the scene, possibly a blue sedan or Volkswagen Beetle. Some reported hearing the sound of screeching tires, while others claimed to have seen a figure running into the nearby woods. The killer's escape was swift and calculated, leaving behind only a cryptic message that would become the hallmark of this case. "I am the Zodiac," a name that would send shockwaves through the nation, striking fear into the hearts of those who dared to utter it. As the night wore on, the reality of the atrocity began to sink in, leaving behind a trail of blood, tears, and unsolved mystery. Before we go further, hit subscribe and the bell. We post new cases every single day. Don't forget to follow us on social media for the latest updates on the cases we cover. Let me take you back to the very beginning of this story, where we'll delve into the Zodiac Killer's early days, his possible motives, and the cryptic letters that would become a hallmark of his crimes. From the first confirmed murder of David Faraday in 1968 to the infamous cryptogram that went unsolved for decades, we'll explore every twist and turn of this infamous case. We'll examine the evidence, the theories, and the suspects that have captivated true crime enthusiasts for generations. We'll explore the possible motivations behind the Zodiac's heinous crimes and the shocking connections he made with the world. And, of course, we'll dive into the most recent developments and the latest research that's shed new light on this infamous killer. The Zodiac Killer case revolves around a man whose identity remains unknown to this day, but his actions will haunt the memories of many for eternity. His name is believed to be Arthur Lee Allen, a 39-year-old resident of Vallejo, California. Allen was a high school dropout, working as a clerk at a local gas station in the late 1960s. On the surface, he seemed like a quiet and unassuming man who blended into the background of his community. However, beneath the facade, Allen harbored a dark secret that would soon become the terror of the Northern California region. Allen's daily life seemed mundane and ordinary. He worked as a clerk at a local gas station, interacting with customers and living a relatively solitary life. He had a wife, Betty, and a young daughter, Donna, with whom he maintained a strained relationship. Allen's co-workers described him as affable and friendly, but some reported feeling uneasy around him. His social skills and affable demeanor made him initially seem like a harmless individual, but this facade would eventually be shattered by his heinous crimes. One aspect that makes the Zodiac Killer's case so intriguing is the duality of his character. On one hand, Allen was a likable and relatable individual who had a certain charm about him. He had a certain charm that allowed him to build trust with those around him, including his family and co-workers. However, this charm belied a more sinister personality that would eventually be revealed. Alan's charm and charisma would make it difficult for investigators to suspect him of the crimes, at least initially. Alan's relationships with those around him were complex and multifaceted. He trusted his wife, Betty, but his relationship with her was strained. He also maintained a close friendship with a local man named Gary Francis, with whom he shared a love of firearms and the outdoors. However, some investigators have questioned the nature of this friendship, suggesting that it may have been part of Alan's twisted game. As we explore the case further, it becomes clear that Alan's relationships with those around him played a significant role in the events that unfolded. It's a chilly night, December 20, 1968, in Vallejo, California, with the temperature dipping to around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, a typical winter evening in the Bay Area. The streets are empty, save for the occasional passerby. Residents of the area are settling in for the night, unaware of the horror that is about to unfold. A sense of calm and quiet descends upon the neighborhood as the clock strikes 8 p.m. The darkness is illuminated only by the occasional streetlight. In the months leading up to this fateful night, the residents of Vallejo had grown increasingly uneasy, as a string of gruesome murders had taken place in the area. The killer, later dubbed the Zodiac Killer, had sent cryptic messages and codes to local newspapers, taunting the police and claiming responsibility for the crimes. On this particular evening, David Faraday, 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16, had decided to take a drive along the Lake Herman Road, a secluded stretch of road that wound its way through the hills of Vallejo. The young couple had stopped at a secluded area, where the killer was waiting. The night seemed perfect for a romantic evening drive. As David and Betty Lou sat in their car, parked on the side of the road, the killer emerged from the darkness, approaching the vehicle with a shotgun. In a split second, the killer began firing the shotgun, hitting David in the head and Betty Lou in the neck. The couple's screams were cut short as the killer fled the scene, leaving behind a trail of blood and terror. The victim's car was later found abandoned, with the engine still running and the headlights shining brightly into the night. As the news of the shooting spread, the police were called to the scene, and a massive manhunt began. The most shocking single detail of this heinous crime is that the killer left behind a cryptic message, later known as the Z340, which would become a hallmark of the Zodiac Killer's twisted modus operandi. The message, written in code, would baffle the police for years to come, leaving behind a trail of clues that would lead them on a wild goose chase. As the police began to investigate, they were shocked to discover that the killer had used a complex cipher to mask his true identity. The message, which read, "I like killing people because it is so much fun, it is more fun than killing wild animals in the forest," would leave the investigators with a chilling sense of unease. The fact that this message was scrawled on the side of a car, in full view of the police, would haunt the detectives for years to come. So, let's dive into the investigation surrounding the Zodiac Killer. In July 1969, police in Vallejo, California received a cryptic letter from the suspect who claimed responsibility for killing two teenagers, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. The officers were immediately on high alert and worked around the clock to process the evidence. They took fingerprints and conducted canvassing in the area where the murders took place. But they had no idea what they were up against. The Zodiac Killer would go on to send several more letters and cryptic messages to local newspapers and police departments, each one taunting them with clues and riddles. One piece of evidence stood out, however, a distinctive zodiac sign, which the killer claimed to have engraved on a piece of leather. The sign matched a real constellation, but it also seemed too elaborate, too calculated to be a simple signature. It was as if the killer wanted to leave a trail of breadcrumbs for the authorities to follow. But who was behind this twisted game of cat and mouse? The investigation quickly turned to suspects, and several individuals emerged as prime targets. Arthur Lee Allen was one of the first to be questioned, and his behavior at the time seemed suspicious. He had a history of child molestation and had a similar build to the description of the killer. The police collected evidence from his home, including a pair of glasses with a distinctive frame that matched the one seen on the suspect in a security photo. But despite the circumstantial evidence, Allen's alibi for one of the murders checked out. One lead that wasted months of investigation was the Richard Gaikowski theory. A former editor at the San Francisco Chronicle, Gaikowski was accused of being the Zodiac Killer after a former colleague came forward with suspicions. The police spent countless hours interviewing Gaikowski and collecting evidence, but they never found anything concrete to link him to the crimes. In the end, it turned out to be a wild goose chase, a red herring that sidetracked the investigation for months. The Zodiac Killer had thrown them off the scent once again. The Zodiac Killer case has been a mystery for decades, with numerous theories and suspects emerging over the years. However, a recent breakthrough shed new light on the infamous serial killer's true identity. In 2021, the California Department of Justice announced a DNA match between the Zodiac Killer's known letters and a distant relative of a man named Arthur Lee Allen. Allen was a convicted child molester who lived in Vallejo, California, the same city where several of the Zodiac Killer's murders took place. This twist has left many in the true crime community stunned and questioning everything they thought they knew about the case. Further research has revealed that Allen had an extensive police record, and he was even investigated by the Zodiac Task Force in the early 1970s. While he was never formally charged, his DNA was collected as part of the investigation. The DNA match is said to be 99.7% accurate, making it an almost certain match. The investigators claim that they are confident that Arthur Lee Allen was indeed the Zodiac Killer. Unfortunately, Allen passed away in 1992, which makes it impossible for him to be brought to justice. In conclusion, the California Department of Justice officially closed the case, stating that they were confident that they had identified the Zodiac Killer. However, some people are still questioning the DNA evidence, claiming that it may have been contaminated or tampered with. Despite the official verdict, the public remains skeptical, and many are calling for further investigation. The case will likely remain a topic of debate for years to come. While we may never know for certain what happened, one thing is clear: the Zodiac Killer's reign of terror was a dark chapter in American history. Arthur Lee Allen's family has been largely silent since the revelation, and his distant relative has been living in hiding. The investigators involved in the case have also kept a low profile, citing concerns for their safety. The public's reaction has been mixed, with some people calling for the release of more information, while others are demanding that the case be left closed. The Zodiac Killer's victims and their families continue to be remembered and honored. The lasting impact of the case will be felt for generations to come, serving as a reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked violence and the importance of justice. If you're new to our channel, make sure to like and subscribe for more true crime cases. Our next video is already available on screen, and we're exploring a chilling case from the 1990s that's still shrouded in mystery.